Think of one of your favorite stories, maybe a movie you love or a book you enjoy. Does it have a happy ending, or does it end with a sense of frustration and a sense that life is meaningless? Which is it? Somebody yell it out.
Happy.
Happy endings. Some critics would say that such stories are wishful thinking, that they're like escapist. I might agree if it wasn't for the fact of this day. 1 Corinthians 15, which we've been hearing from this morning, is the chapter in the Bible most focused on what we are celebrating today. All through that chapter, the Apostle Paul is declaring the truth, the reality of the resurrection of Christ and of you and I who belong to Christ. Verses 3 and 4, Christ died, was buried, and was raised from the dead on the third day. Verse 23, Christ was raised first, and we, like him, will be raised. He's the first fruits. Verse 53, the perishable will be transformed into the imperishable, the mortal into immortality. And then the last verse in that chapter that John just read for us, verse 58, Paul's conclusion. Therefore, my brothers and sisters, stand firm, let nothing move you. Always give yourselves fully to the work of the Lord, because you know that your labor in the Lord is not in vain. The New Living Translation, nothing you do for the Lord is ever useless. Is that true? That we can give ourselves fully to the Lord's work because nothing we do for the Lord is ever useless. Because in our lives, each of us, I think, could give a catalog of good things that we do that sort of seem in the end to be useless. You know, we love someone and it seems like it makes no difference. We speak truth and it's not heard. We build a relationship and a person moves away or they just ignore us. The apostle says, you know that your labor in the Lord is not in vain. Do we know that? Maybe we do. Because we have this penchant for stories with happy endings. That's one thing. Another, Peter Berger points out something fascinating. He's a Lutheran sociologist, philosopher. He says, when a child wakes up in the middle of the night crying, the parent goes to comfort them. And what does that parent say? Something along the lines of, it's okay, everything's going to be all right. Why do we say that as parents? Are we just meaning, I'm going to do my best to make it so that things are as good as possible for you in this world that may not be good? Or are we saying, everything will not, in fact, be all right, but you're better off believing that it will until you're older, so everything will be all right? In order to be truthful, do I have to say to that crying child, yeah, you have reasons to be fearful and afraid. The world is a terrifying place. Your existence is fragile and tenuous, and ultimately all that you love and hold dear will be swallowed up and negated by death. No, we instinctively know that we can comfort the child saying, everything's okay, and that it is right and truthful for us to do that, to say that. Berger says we all deep down inside have a sense that that is true. He calls this the rumor of angels. Deep down inside, we hear what Julian of Norwich, a medieval Christian mystic, heard a voice saying, all shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. We have that instinct. And we have our instinct that it's right for our stories to have happy endings. Tell me something that indicates that that rumor just might indeed be true. Christ is risen, and Christ is risen indeed. On Friday, the forces of evil seemed to have the upper hand. The world said to God, this is what we think of your son and all of his work that he did for you. But on Sunday, God said, this is what I think of my son and his obedience, his work for me. There was a violent earthquake. The angel of the Lord came down from heaven, went to the tomb, rolled the stone away, and the power of God raised Jesus from the dead. Evil did not have the upper hand. Jesus did not slack in doing his Father's work. He kept it up even in the face of evil. And they killed him. But Christ is risen. And that is how God treats those who obey him. That is why Paul talks about Jesus's resurrection and our resurrection, and then says, therefore, my dear brothers and sisters, stand firm, let nothing move you. Always give yourselves fully to the work of the Lord, because you know that your labor in the Lord is not in vain. Imagine that you know someone very wealthy, they have a lot of power and influence, and they asked you to take care of their entire estate for the whole summer. They wanted you to mow the lawn, trim the hedges, take care of the mail, clean the pool. They were asking you to sacrifice your entire summer to help them. They said it would mean a lot to them if you did it, so much they will make it worth your while at the end. At the end of the summer, you will be paid $1,000 per hour. Even made Brandon give a woo on that one. He'd quit his current job. So that whole thing sounds great to you. So you begin doing it. You find plenty of motivation and plenty of hope in the midst of it is a lot of sacrifice during the summer. But what if some friends keep saying that they think the whole idea is a sham, a scam even? They tell you that they're hearing rumors that this owner is actually broke and he has no way of giving you any money, that you're going to receive nothing in the end. You will just waste an entire summer. What will you do? Well, one day as you're taking in the mail, you see God put it on the top of the stack, a bank statement. And you open it, because if the owner is lying to you, They don't have a right to keep the secret, right? And you decide you're going to tell them that you opened it either way. And the bank statement shows that this person has plenty of ability to keep his promise. Well, God has given us a statement that shows that he has plenty of ability to keep his promise. Tell me again something that indicates that he can back his promise. Paul says, starting in verse 30 of 1 Corinthians 15, why do we endanger ourselves every hour? I face death every day. If I fought wild beasts in Ephesus with no more than human hopes, what have I gained? If the dead are not raised, then let us eat and drink, for tomorrow we die. But the whole chapter, Paul's saying, that's not the case. Christ is raised. There were all these people who saw him alive. And he says, I saw him too. And Paul says, we like him will be raised. The owner has the power to carry out what he promised. You can invest in the future because there is a future. And Paul is saying, my future bodily resurrection, your future bodily resurrection can free you from materialism, from consumerism, only thinking, eat and drink, for tomorrow we die. All the sacrifices are worth it because the Lord does care what we do. And the rewards in that day are going to be so amazing, much more than $1,000 an hour, worth every effort, every sacrifice. Lynn Meller was a storyteller, preacher. He traveled around the Mennonite church. One of his stories was of his Mennonite father-in-law who accepted this long-haired Vietnam vet who married his daughter and who led him to Christ. This father-in-law did construction in the big city. And if a person would stop by the work site and say, do you have any work? The father-in-law would have the guy move a pile of bricks, even if it did need moving. He would often take them home for lunch or even for the night. And one year he was shot and killed by one of these young men that he took home. Lynn Meller didn't tell that story to get sympathy or tears. He told it because his father-in-law was a hero to him. According to the world's values, the father-in-law was dumb. But when we know how God treats those who obey him, when we know that our labor in the Lord is not in vain, that father-in-law is our model for his self-giving sacrificial love. Just as the cross in the end was not a tragedy, but rather something we lift up, so the death of that construction worker was something Lynn Meller lifted up. We don't have to give up on loving other people in order to protect ourselves. We don't have to let fear of suffering or failure or even death control our actions. We can let God and his kingdom and his righteousness control us. Easter is the ultimate preview of how life in the end will turn out for those who seek first the kingdom of God. All will be well. Easter shows how God is going to treat those who love him and serve him. He will vindicate them, and decisively. Jesus did his Father's will even when it meant marching straight into the jaws of death. And death should have ran the other way. In fact, it did, because Christ is risen. Therefore, stand firm, let nothing move you. Always give yourselves fully to the work of the Lord, because you know that your labor in the Lord is not in vain.